the Ouya. It had been the darling of Kickstarter, and a lot of people, myself included, were so excited for the promise that the Ouya console delivered as an independent console, and we believed that it would maybe be a competitor to maybe even the Xbox or the PlayStation or the Wii, but it never actually lived up to that potential, or at least maybe that hype. Now the Ouya is out.
Is it?
It is out. It is actually on Target shelves right now for $99.99.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And I want to know what happened. Do we consider this a failure at this point?
How do we consider it a failure already if it just came out? What are people saying?
People are, well, I don't consider this a failure, by the way. I'm just saying, do we? And my answer is no. But many people are saying that they're disappointed with their kits, that the games are disappointing, the marketplace is disappointing, the controller feels cheap, and they don't like it. They recently released a new white Ouya with double the internal storage for $130, but it did little to assuage critics of this new console.
How long has the Ouya been out?
Not that long.
Ballpark it.
Less than a year.
Less than a year. Okay, so months and months.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is no longer a launch console.
No.
Okay.
And their ultimate plan is to release a new one every year, much like you would release a mobile phone. And a lot of people right now are shit-talking the Ouya on Reddit and saying this is a shitty console, I don't like it, it has failed expectations. Did it fail expectations? Were our expectations too high for this independent console?
Yeah, I think that because Kickstarter is such a new and exciting thing, and people are like really...
That was one of the first huge successes
Huge successes on Kickstarter. A lot of people were behind it. They wanted independent, like big partisan Microsoft and Sony console makers.
Call of Duty or games like that. But
so expectations were high, and maybe too high because a lot of times it's difficult for an independent startup to deliver on such a large scale. Even if it had a wildly successful Kickstarter, there's stuff like, can we get the rights to really good games, or we're only working with third-party developers,
it's also supposed to be an emulator, and you're supposed to be able to go online and play with others and then have a great single-player game selection. And apparently that's not the case right now.
Okay, if the big problem is game selection, it's not enough good games or not enough games at all, is that what they're saying?
That's a big problem.
Okay, well then people have forgotten how shitty launch consoles are within the first year. Within the first couple years. You don't really get the good 8, 9, and 10 scoring AAA titles until 4, 5, 6 years into a console's life. If you look at the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 and even the PlayStation 2 before it, things start slow and then they pick up, and then you start getting the really good games years into the console's life, and then it falls off. Now, the Ouya might not have the luxury of being around for years.
No, and it also does not have the backing of a huge major corporation with a track record of. Granted, there are people in the corporation who have come from major companies and do have track records themselves, but I think the Ouya may be a victim of overhyping. We were really, really crazily excited about this when it came out, but then I remember when the perks started to come out for Kickstarter, they took a long time, or they weren't complete, and people were dissatisfied with that. I think this is a good try for an independent console, for sure. I mean, we're never going to see AAA titles on it, at least in this current iteration, maybe in the future when they change it up a little bit.
So is it a case of too much success
to be
able to manage? You get so much money and you have to promise so many things, but those things really weren't your original intention and maybe aren't even possible?
No, they said certain things were possible, but it hasn't gotten there yet.
I'm just wondering if it's their fault for not delivering or our fault for expecting too much.
I really think it's both.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's fair.
I want to know, how does this compare with the expectation versus delivery for, say, the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4? The console wars are raging right now. There is no clear winner, but people are generally much, much more satisfied. We're comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah,
but
agreed.
Do you feel like the hype there was different?
It's a weird kind of hype because the Xbox One started off with so much bad press.
It did.
It seemed dead before arrival. Had they stuck with the original game plan, it, in theory, would have been a colossal failure. Obviously, all those people that complained about the Xbox One, some of them would have still bought it. just because they needed those games. That notwithstanding, Microsoft had to do a lot of backpedaling just to get back to square one.
And Sony didn't make things better by launching a massive marketing campaign.
As they should have. That was
well,
brilliant.
it was a great move on their part, but it was still a lot of marketing back and forth.
But I think it's more that Microsoft is not living up to expectations, but now they are meeting exceedingly low expectations, or they are doing damage control on bad expectations.
I think they've listened to feedback, which they should have done, and I think they've made a good turnaround in good faith for consumers.
I mean, maybe
granted, we're one firmware mandatory update away from them reinstituting things, but that's true of the PlayStation 4 as well.
Now, I don't know if it was so much like their backs were against the wall and like financially they had to back down on this stuff, or they actually listened to gamers. That's entirely possible. Because we got what we want, essentially. Yeah, I know it's about money, but it can be either of those scenarios and still be about money.
So, where does this rank in the console spectrum? Now we have Microsoft and Sony up high. I would say Nintendo is like mid, a little, not mid, high mid.
Nintendo's doing their own thing, though.
They are.
They
doing
don't
their
care.
own thing.
They don't want to compete.
They're not really in that game. They're not really in that war, which is respectable in and of itself.
They
have their own thing going on.
They can't win it. They might as well fight a different battle.
Where does Steam Machine go?
Now that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because Steam Machine kind of dilutes its base. I know that PC gamers are PC gamers, and nothing is going to sell them on consoles. Mm-hmm. This is kind of a halfway point. I think what it's going to do, it's not going to alienate PC gamers because they can keep doing their thing. Mm-hmm. But it will bring console gamers into the fold.
Yeah.
I don't think it will be a console killer.
No, it's not. I think it's more of a...
I don't think that's what they're trying to be.
No, they're not. I think that's going to be more of bridging the gap between PC and console. Maybe it'll bring more people over to the PC side of things.
I think it's going to bring more people over to Linux, at the very least.
That could be cool, too. What do you think of the Ouya? Well, have you tried one? What do you think of the marketing so far? Let us know in the comments below, and we will check on that later.